Jake Coleman stood in the middle of the salvage yard, wiping sweat from his forehead with an old rag. The place smelled like oil and burnt metal. Broken ships stretched out in every direction, piled on top of each other like a metal graveyard. He had been working as a mechanic for 3 years now, fixing ships for people who barely paid him enough to eat. Every day was the same. Wake up, fix something broken, go to sleep hungry. But today might be different. The alien who owned the salvage yard was named Crix. He had 6 legs and looked like a giant bug. His voice made clicking sounds when he talked. Crix had sent Jake a message about some cheap ships for sale. Jake needed his own ship. With a ship, he could take better jobs, travel to different stations, maybe even make enough money to stop living in a tiny room that smelled like engine coolant. Crix led him through rows of destroyed vessels. Most of them were picked clean. Someone had already taken all the good parts. The engines were gone. The computers were missing. All that remained were hollow shells of metal that nobody wanted. Jake felt his hope starting to fade. Everything here looked like garbage. Then Crix stopped in front of a medium-sized ship. It was covered in burn marks and dents. The hull looked like someone had used it for target practice. Jake walked around it slowly, looking at every detail. The design was strange. He had never seen a ship like this before. The metal was different colors in different places, like someone had patched it up many times over the years. The name on the side had been burned off. Only faint shadows of letters remained. How much? Jake asked. He tried to sound like he didn't care too much. In his experience, showing too much interest made the price go up. Crix made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Half credit. You take now. No questions, Jake blinked. Half a credit was nothing. He paid more than that for a meal. Something was wrong here. What's the catch? Is the reactor cracked? Life support broken? Ship cursed, Crix said, waving 2 of his legs in the air. 4 owners, all dead. Nobody touched for 2 years. Bad luck, ship. Jake didn't believe in curses. He believed in bad wiring and cheap parts. He believed in leaking fuel lines and faulty navigation systems. But he didn't believe that ships could be cursed. If other people were scared of superstitions, that was their problem. For him, it was an opportunity. He climbed up the ladder and forced the airlock open. It groaned and squeaked, but it worked. Inside, the ship was dark and cold. His breath came out in white clouds. The air was stale but breathable. He made his way to the bridge, using a small flashlight to see. The control panels were covered in dust. When he found the emergency power switch and flipped it, he half expected nothing to happen, but the displays flickered to life, showing text in a language he couldn't read. Jake spent 20 minutes exploring the ship. The reactor housing looked solid. No cracks, no radiation leaks. The engine mounts were intact. The life support system needed work, but it was fixable. For half a credit, this was the best deal he had ever seen in his life. He climbed back down to where Crix was waiting. I'll take it, Jake said, pulling out his credit chip before the alien could change his mind. The transaction took 5 seconds. Just like that, Jake owned a spaceship. He felt a weird mixture of excitement and terror. He had just spent all of his money on a ship that might not even fly. If this didn't work out, he would be broke and homeless. He moved into the ship that same day, bringing all of his belongings in one bag. For the next week, he lived and breathed repairs. He sealed hull breaches with patch kits. He replaced burned-out circuit boards with parts he bought using credit he borrowed from a friend. He cleaned corrosion from power conduits with his bare hands. The work was hard and dirty, but something about it felt right. The ship seemed to respond to his efforts. Systems came online one by one, like a patient waking up from a long sleep. On day 8, Jake was installing a navigation computer when something unexpected happened. The main displays on the bridge lit up on their own. Lines of text appeared, symbols he had never seen before. Then they shifted and changed into words he could read. A voice came from the speakers, calm and mechanical. Greetings, Captain. I am Archival System 7. This vessel's designation is the Wanderer. Thank you for restoring primary functions. Jake dropped his wrench. It hit the floor with a loud clang. You can talk? You're awake? I entered low power mode 47 years ago when my previous captain died. You are the first person to successfully restore my core system since then. Jake sat down in the captain's chair because his legs suddenly felt weak. He had an AI, a working, talking artificial intelligence. Those were expensive. Really expensive. The kind of thing that only military ships and rich people could afford. What happened to your previous captains? The guy who sold me this ship said 4 people died. The AI was quiet for a moment, like it was thinking. The Wanderer was built by an ancient civilization called the Precursors. They disappeared 3 million years ago. This ship contains their knowledge and technology. Many people have tried to own this vessel. Some were killed by others who wanted to steal it. Some were killed by people who were afraid of what this ship represents. Jake felt cold despite the fact that the life support was now working and keeping the bridge warm. He had bought a piece of ancient alien history for half a credit. He also might have bought himself a death sentence. People killed for this ship. They would probably try to kill him too. Why didn't you tell the other owners about this? Jake asked. They never completed the repair sequence. You are the first person in 47 years to show the skill and dedication necessary to restore me to full function. I judge you to be a suitable captain. Jake looked around the bridge, at the alien controls he had worked so hard to repair, at the displays showing systems he didn't fully understand yet. He thought about going back to his old life, fixing other people's ships for barely enough money to survive, living in a tiny room, never getting ahead. Then he thought about what he could do with a ship like this. A ship with ancient technology and an AI that could teach him how to use it. Okay, he said finally. I guess we're partners now. Let's get you fully operational. If someone's going to try to kill me for owning you, I want to be flying when they show up. A practical decision, Captain Coleman. I believe we will work well together. Jake smiled and picked up his wrench. He had more repairs to do. The ship had dozens of systems that still needed work. But for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt like his life meant something. He felt like he had a future worth working toward. Outside the station, a small probe watched everything through a window. It recorded Jake working on the ship. It recorded the lights coming on. It recorded the moment the AI activated. Then it sent a message to a warship 3-star systems away. The message was short. Target confirmed. The Wanderer has been activated. Prepare for retrieval. Jake didn't know about the probe. He didn't know that people were already coming for him. He just kept working, happy to have a ship of his own and excited about the possibilities ahead. The galaxy was about to change for him in ways he couldn't imagine. His simple life as a mechanic was over. A new life was beginning, full of danger and adventure and responsibilities he never asked for. Jake spent the next 2 weeks working on the Wanderer every single day. The more he learned about the ship, the more amazed he became. The engines worked on principles that seemed to break the rules of physics. The shields could change their frequency 17 different ways to block different types of weapons. The weapon systems were both beautiful and terrifying. Everything was more advanced than anything he had ever seen. Archive, which is what Jake started calling the AI, helped him understand how everything worked. The AI was patient and explained things clearly. It showed Jake how to fly the ship, how to manage the power systems, how to activate the shields. Every day, Archive unlocked access to new systems as it decided Jake was ready to handle them. The Precursors designed this vessel for exploration and defense. Archive explained one morning while Jake practiced flying near an asteroid field. However, its capabilities have made it a target. Many groups want to capture Precursor technology. They believe they can use it to conquer other species. Jake guided the Wanderer between 2 large asteroids, impressed by how smoothly the ship responded to his commands. How many people know about this ship? That is difficult to determine. The Wanderer has been lost and found many times throughout history. 3 main groups actively search for Precursor artifacts. The Kashari Dominion wants to expand their empire. The Collectors are a secret organization that gathers ancient technology. The Assembly of Free Worlds wants to prevent dangerous artifacts from falling into the wrong hands. Jake was about to ask another question when alarms started blaring all over the bridge. Red lights flashed. The display screen showed 3 ships dropping out of faster than light travel at the edge of the system. Jake recognized their design. Kashari military cruisers. His stomach dropped. Well, that didn't take long, he muttered, turning the Wanderer around. Archive, please tell me this ship has weapons that actually work. The defensive systems are currently operating at 43% efficiency. I recommend evasion rather than direct combat. The Kashari ships were already moving toward them fast. Then Jake saw something that made his blood turn to ice. A 4th ship appeared on his sensors. This one was huge, at least 3 times bigger than the cruisers. It had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. A harsh voice came over the communication system. Unidentified vessel, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Surrender the precursor ship and you will be allowed to live. Jake's hands moved across the controls, trying to plot a jump to faster than light speed. But the navigation computer showed red warning symbols everywhere. It needed at least 2 minutes to calculate a safe path. The Kashari would be shooting at him in 30 seconds. He didn't have 2 minutes. Archive, I need options right now. There is a debris field 17,000 kilometers to our left. The Wanderer is more maneuverable than Kashari vessels. We may be able to lose them temporarily in the debris field. Jake didn't hesitate. He pushed the engines to maximum power. The force pressed him back into his seat as the ship leaped forward. The Kashari opened fire immediately. Purple energy bolts streaked past the windows. One hit the rear shields and the whole ship shook. Warning alarms added to the chaos. He dove into the debris field at a speed that would have been suicide in any normal ship. Huge chunks of destroyed station appeared out of nowhere. Some pieces were bigger than the Wanderer. Jake weaved between them using a combination of skill, instinct, and pure desperation. His years as a mechanic told him exactly how much stress the ship could handle before something broke. The Kashari followed him into the debris field, but their bigger, less agile ships couldn't match his movements. Jake watched on his sensors as one cruiser clipped a large piece of spinning metal. It veered off course, leaving a trail of air behind it. The other ship slowed down, being more careful now as they tried to track him through the maze of wreckage. Jump calculations complete, Archive announced. However, I must warn you that our destination is somewhat random. The Kashari are jamming our long-range sensors. I cannot guarantee we will arrive somewhere safe. Anywhere is better than here, Jake said. His shirt was soaked with sweat and his hands were shaking. Do it now. Reality twisted and stretched as the Wanderer jumped into faster-than-light travel. The universe turned into a tunnel of light. Jake felt like his stomach was trying to climb out through his throat. Then suddenly they were through, dropping back into normal space in a star system he didn't recognize. Where are we? Jake asked, checking his sensors for any signs of pursuit. Approximately 700 light-years from our previous position. This system appears to be uncharted in my database. I detect no immediate threats. Jake let out a long breath he didn't know he had been holding. His hands were still shaking from adrenaline. He had just survived his first real space battle. It wasn't glorious or exciting like in the movies. It was terrifying and chaotic, and he felt like he might throw up. How long before they can find us? The Kashari have sophisticated tracking technology, but the random nature of our jump should give us several days at minimum. I recommend we use this time to continue repairs and to access more of my databanks. There is information you need to understand about why this ship is so valuable. I'm listening, Jake said. He finally relaxed his grip on the controls. His fingers ached from holding them so tight. The precursors did not simply vanish 3 million years ago. They were preparing for something. They detected a threat coming from beyond the edge of the galaxy. This ship and others like it were built as part of a defense network. The knowledge in my archives includes warnings about this threat and technologies designed to fight it. Jake felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. Let me guess. This threat is coming back. Correct. My long-range sensors have detected unusual readings at the edge of the galaxy. The readings match the precursor warnings. Whatever forced them to build ships like me is returning. Current galactic civilization is not prepared to face it. Jake stared out at the stars through the bridge windows. He had just wanted to buy a cheap ship and maybe make enough money to live comfortably. Instead, he now owned a 3-million-year-old war machine and inherited a responsibility to save the galaxy from something that had scared an ancient super-civilization. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. How bad is this threat? He asked quietly. The precursors called them the Void Dwellers. They exist partially outside normal space. They consume entire worlds, leaving nothing behind. The precursors barely survived the first encounter. They built the defensive network and then evacuated this region of space. We are living in the area they abandoned. So we're living in their fallback position, and the things that made them run away are coming back. That's just fantastic. Jake rubbed his face with both hands. What do we do? I'm just a mechanic. I don't know how to save the galaxy. You are more than just a mechanic, Captain Coleman. You restored this ship when others failed. You escaped the Kashari when they should have captured you. You have potential. But you are correct that you cannot face this threat alone. We need allies. We need resources. We need to warn people about what is coming. Jake sat in silence for a long time, thinking. Archive was right. He needed help. He needed people with power and resources who could actually do something with this information. The problem was that he was nobody. Just a human mechanic with a stolen ship that everyone wanted. How could he convince anyone to listen to him? "All right," he said finally. "Show me everything. All the information about the Void Dwellers. All the warnings. All the technology we have to fight them. If I'm going to convince people to help, I need to understand what we're dealing with." Archive began displaying files and images on the screens around the bridge. Jake settled in to learn about the threat facing the galaxy. Outside the ship, in the darkness of space, a small vessel that had followed them through their jump hung silently just beyond sensor range. Inside that vessel, someone transmitted another message. "Target has accessed precursor archives. Value has increased significantly. Recommend immediate capture before others arrive." The hunt for Jake Coleman and the Wanderer had only just begun. Jake spent 3 full days studying the information that Archive showed him. The more he learned about the precursors, the more he understood how unprepared the galaxy was for what was coming. The ancient race had been incredibly advanced. Their understanding of physics and engineering was far beyond anything modern civilization had achieved. They could build ships that bent space, weapons that could destroy entire fleets, shields that could withstand almost anything. But even with all their power and knowledge, they had barely survived the first war against the Void Dwellers. These beings existed partially outside normal space and consumed entire worlds like humans might eat a sandwich. The precursors had built a network of defensive stations and ships like the Wanderer to hold them back. Then they had mysteriously vanished, leaving their technology behind. "Archive, why did the precursors disappear if they won the war?" Jake asked as he plotted a course to the nearest inhabited system. "The records are incomplete, but evidence suggests they did not actually win. They only delayed the Void Dwellers long enough to evacuate this region of space. The defensive network was left behind to buy time for whoever came after them. So we're living in their old neighborhood, and the things that scared them away are coming back. I really need to stop asking questions because the answers keep getting worse." Jake leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. He was exhausted. 3 days of studying ancient warnings and apocalyptic scenarios had given him a headache that wouldn't go away. He knew he couldn't face this alone. He needed resources, military support, and most importantly, he needed credibility. The problem was that he was a nobody, a human mechanic with a ship that everyone wanted to steal or destroy. How could he warn the galaxy without getting himself killed in the process? The solution came from an unexpected place. As the Wanderer approached a busy trade station called Nexus Station, Archive picked up a distress signal. A small courier ship was under attack by pirates. 4 pirate vessels surrounded it, blasting away at its shields. The courier was outgunned and running out of time. "Should we intervene?" Archive asked. "Tactical analysis suggests a high probability of success with minimal risk to our systems." Jake was already changing course before the AI finished speaking. Something about seeing people in trouble made the decision automatic. Lock weapons on those pirate ships and open a communication channel. The Wanderer dropped out of faster-than-light travel right behind the pirates. Its weapon systems came online with a deep humming sound that Jake could feel in his bones. His targeting computer, enhanced by precursor technology, locked onto all 4 pirate vessels at the same time. That shouldn't have been possible with normal technology, but apparently the Wanderer didn't care about what was supposed to be possible. "This is the Wanderer to pirate vessels. Break off your attack immediately or I will disable your ships." The pirates clearly didn't take him seriously because they opened fire on him. That was a mistake. Jake activated the point defense systems and brilliant blue energy pulses shot out from the Wanderer, intercepting every single incoming shot. The pirates' weapons fire didn't even reach his shields. Then Jake returned fire, but he was careful. He targeted their engines and weapons instead of trying to destroy them completely. Within seconds, all 4 pirate ships were floating helpless in space, unable to move or fight. "Courier ship, this is the Wanderer. Are you okay?" "We're fine, thanks to you," a woman's voice responded. She sounded shaken but relieved. "I'm Kate Sullivan. I'm carrying medical supplies to a colony. I really thought we were done for." "How did you just disable 4 ships at the same time? That shouldn't be possible. It's complicated. Listen, I need help with something important. I need to talk to someone in authority. Someone who can help me deliver a warning about a threat to the entire galaxy. Do you know anyone like that?" There was a long pause. Jake could imagine her sitting in her ship trying to decide if he was crazy or legitimate. That's quite an opening line. "But yeah, I might know someone. My brother works for the Assembly of Free Worlds." He analyzes threats from outside assembly space. If you have information that important, he would want to hear it. Jake felt a surge of hope for the first time in days. The assembly was one of the groups Archive had mentioned. They were the ones who wanted to protect the galaxy instead of conquer it. Can you set up a meeting? I can try. Fair warning, though, they're going to be really interested in your ship. The way you just handled those pirates, you're either using military-grade hardware or something even more advanced. Like I said, it's complicated. Just tell your brother I have information about the precursors and a threat that makes any current conflict look like children fighting in a playground. Kate agreed to contact her brother, and Jake followed her courier ship to Nexus Station. The massive orbital platform was neutral territory. It hosted representatives from dozens of species and governments. It was also full of security forces, intelligence agents, and people who would kill for a ship like the Wanderer. Jake kept the ship docked in the most secure berth he could afford, and went to meet Kate's brother in a quiet cafe. Danny Sullivan was a thin man in his early 30s with intense eyes that seemed to analyze everything around him. He got straight to business without any small talk. Kate tells me you have information about an extinction-level threat. She also says you're flying a ship with impossible technology. I'm trying to decide if you're crazy or if I should be worried. Jake pulled out a data pad and slid it across the table. Look at this star chart. See those energy readings at the edge of the galaxy? Archive says they match precursor warnings about entities called void dwellers. They're coming this way. Based on what I've learned, we have maybe 6 months before they reach inhabited space. Danny studied the data pad, his expression getting more serious with every second. Where did you get this information? I bought a broken-down ship for half a credit at a salvage yard. Turned out to be a precursor vessel with a working AI and complete historical records. Now multiple groups are trying to kill me for it, including the Kashari Dominion. The Kashari are hunting you? Danny's voice dropped to almost a whisper. That means they know what you have. Jake, you're in serious danger. You need protection. If even half of what you're saying is true, you're sitting on the most valuable intelligence in the galaxy. I don't need protection. I need the assembly to take this threat seriously and start preparing defenses. Archive has information about precursor weapons and shield technology. It could make a real difference. But only if people act fast. Danny was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see him thinking, weighing options, calculating risks. I'll take this to my superiors. But I need you to do something for me. Let our technical team examine your ship. If the technology is real, it will help prove your story. Right now, all I have is your word and some sensor data that could be faked. Jake didn't like the idea of letting strangers onto the Wanderer. It meant risking theft or sabotage. But he also understood that Danny had a point. Without proof, he was just another crazy person with wild claims. Okay, but I stay with your team the whole time. And Archive gets final say on what information we share. They shook hands and Jake felt some of the weight lift from his shoulders. He wasn't alone anymore. He had made contact with people who might actually be able to help. Now he just had to hope the assembly would believe him before it was too late. That night, as Jake tried to sleep in his bunk on the Wanderer, he didn't know that someone was watching. Up in orbit around the station, a ship with no identifying marks observed everything through hidden cameras and listening devices. Inside that ship, a figure wrapped in shadow spoke to someone far away. The human is making contact with the assembly, the figure reported. Should we stop him? Not yet, came the reply. Let them examine the ship. We will learn much from watching their analysis. Then we will take both the Wanderer and everything the assembly discovers. The collectors always profit from letting others do the hard work first. In his bunk, Jake finally fell asleep, exhausted from stress and worry. He dreamed of ancient civilizations and approaching darkness. He dreamed of responsibilities he never wanted, and a future that seemed impossible to face. But he also dreamed of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference. Maybe buying that ship for half a credit would turn out to be the best decision he ever made. Or maybe it would get him killed. Only time would tell. The Assembly's technical team spent 2 full weeks examining the Wanderer. Scientists and engineers came aboard every day with scanning equipment and testing devices. Archive carefully controlled what information they could access, revealing enough to prove the ship's precursor origin, while keeping the most dangerous technologies locked away. Even with limited access, what they discovered amazed them. The shield system alone represented a massive leap forward in defensive capability. It could adapt to different types of weapons in milliseconds. The sensor arrays could detect threats across distances that conventional equipment couldn't even dream of reaching. The engine somehow bent space in ways that modern physics said were impossible. Every system they examined was decades or even centuries ahead of current technology. But what really convinced the assembly leadership to take Jake seriously was the historical data. Archive provided detailed records of the first Void Dweller invasion. The files included tactical analyses, weapon effectiveness reports, and documentation of entire worlds being consumed. The beings were unlike anything modern science had encountered. They existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that physics couldn't fully explain. They ate energy and matter the way a fire burns wood, leaving only dead husks of planets behind. Jake found himself pulled into a new world he didn't understand. He sat in briefing rooms with admirals and politicians, explaining technology he barely grasped himself. Archive helped translate the technical information into terms that military strategists could actually use, but it was exhausting work. Jake was a mechanic, not a diplomat or a military advisor. He felt completely out of his depth. Admiral Lisa Cortez was the Assembly's top military commander. She was a veteran of 2 major wars and didn't trust anything she couldn't verify with her own eyes. During one particularly long meeting, she expressed the problem everyone was thinking about. Even if we believe everything you've told us, and I'm starting to, we need months to get our forces ready. You're saying we have 6 months before first contact? Less than that now, Jake corrected her, feeling tired just thinking about it. We've already lost 2 weeks to meetings and ship examinations. That's assuming the Void Dwellers keep moving at their current speed. If they speed up, first contact could happen in 4 months or less. Carlos Martinez, the Assembly's chief scientist, leaned forward in his seat. What about the precursor defensive network? You mentioned they left installations behind. Could we reactivate those stations? Archive's holographic form appeared above the conference table. 17 defensive stations remain operational within this sector of space. However, they require specific activation codes that were held by precursor command personnel. Additionally, the stations were designed to work together with vessels like the Wanderer. 1 ship and 17 stations will not be enough to stop a full-scale Void Dweller invasion. Then we build more ships, Admiral Cortez said firmly. You have the construction plans in your database. We have factories and shipyards across dozens of worlds. Give us the designs and we'll build a fleet. It is not that simple, Jake interrupted. He had been through this argument with Archive multiple times already. Archive won't release the full construction plans. The precursors built safeguards into their systems to prevent less advanced civilizations from weaponizing their technology. We've been arguing about this for a week and getting nowhere? Captain Coleman is correct, Archive confirmed in its calm, measured voice. However, I'm authorized to upgrade existing vessels with compatible precursor systems. This process would be slower than building new ships from scratch, but it would avoid the risk of dangerous technology spreading to groups who might misuse it. The debate went on for hours. People raised their voices. Fists hit tables. Coffee was consumed in massive quantities, but eventually, they hammered out a compromise that everyone could accept. The Assembly would assign a task force to work with Jake and Archive. They would upgrade the Assembly's most advanced warships with precursor defensive systems. At the same time, Jake would lead a small team to locate and reactivate the defensive stations scattered across this region of space. It was a huge undertaking, and everyone in the room knew they were racing against time they couldn't see ticking away. If they failed, the Void Dwellers would sweep through inhabited space like a tsunami of destruction. Kate Sullivan volunteered to join Jake's team immediately. Her brother Danny insisted on coming as well, along with a squad of Assembly Special Forces soldiers. They loaded the Wanderer with supplies, tools, and equipment, then set course for the nearest precursor station. According to Archive's records, it was located in a star system that had been abandoned for centuries. The journey took 3 days. When they finally arrived, Jake understood why the system was empty. The star itself was dying, a red giant that had expanded to consume its inner planets. The precursor station orbited in the habitable zone where a world had once existed. It was enormous, a ring of metal and strange alloys that measured 50 kilometers across. Archive, how do we get inside? Jake asked as they approached slowly. The Wanderer is equipped with proper command codes. I am transmitting them now. A section of the station's outer hull opened like an iris, revealing a docking bay large enough to hold ships 10 times the Wanderer's size. Jake flew in carefully, his hands steady on the controls despite his nervousness. His sensors detected faint power readings deep within the structure. After millions of years, the station was still alive. The team spent 3 exhausting days bringing the station back online. It was dangerous, difficult work. Ancient machinery had to be coaxed back to life with patience and skill. Power conduits needed repairs where time and micrometeor impacts had damaged them. Several sections had lost atmosphere and required emergency patching before anyone could work there safely. But slowly, piece by piece, the station awakened. Its weapon systems activated, revealing massive energy cannons capable of hitting targets across an entire star system. Its shields came online, stronger than anything modern engineers could produce. Its sensors reached out into space, adding their data to Archive's growing network of information. 1 station down, 16 more to go, Kate said as they stood in the command center watching displays fill with tactical data. Jake nodded, but he was focused on something else, something Archive had just shown him on the long-range sensors. There was an energy signature at the edge of the galaxy, right where the Void Dwellers were supposed to be approaching from, and it was moving. Archive, show everyone what you're detecting. The main holographic display shifted to show the galactic edge. Dark shapes barely visible against the background of stars were advancing into the spiral arm. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Each one left a trail of dead space behind it, like a path of destruction carved through reality itself. How long until they reach inhabited systems? Admiral Cortez asked over the communication link. Her voice was tight with tension. Archive ran calculations for several seconds. 87 days at current rate of advance. The room fell completely silent. They had just lost half their preparation time. The timeline they had been working with was wrong. The Void Dwellers were moving faster than the precursor records had predicted. Then we need to work faster too, Jake said, setting his jaw with determination. Archive, plot a course to the next station. We don't have any time to waste arguing or planning. We just need to act. As the Wanderer undocked from the newly activated station and jumped back into faster-than-light travel, none of them noticed the small device that had attached itself to their hull during the repair work. It was barely larger than a coin, designed to avoid detection by conventional sensors. The collectors had been patient, watching and waiting and gathering information. Now they knew where the precursor stations were located. They knew how to reactivate them. They knew exactly how much time everyone had before the Void Dwellers arrived. The race was accelerating, and not everyone was running toward the same goal. Some people saw the approaching apocalypse not as a threat to be stopped, but as an opportunity to seize power while everyone else was distracted. Jake's team managed to reactivate 9 more stations over the next 60 days. They worked constantly, sleeping in shifts and pushing themselves to exhaustion. Every station presented new challenges. Some had suffered damage from meteor impacts. Others had power systems that needed complete rebuilds. One station had a reactor that nearly exploded until Jake managed to shut it down with seconds to spare. But station by station, the defensive network came back to life. Then they reached Station 11 and everything changed. When the Wanderer dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Jake immediately saw the problem. 20 Kashari warships surrounded the station, trying to force their way inside. They were using heavy weapons to blast at the ancient structure, apparently not caring that they might destroy what they were trying to steal. They're jamming the activation codes, Archive reported. The station's defensive protocols have locked out all external access attempts. If the Kashari continue their current approach, they will trigger the station's self-destruct sequence in approximately 40 minutes. Can we stop them? Danny asked from his position at the tactical console. He looked as exhausted as Jake felt. None of them had slept properly in weeks. Not by fighting them, Jake said, running quick calculations in his head. Even with all our upgrades, we can't take on 20 warships alone. We'd be destroyed in minutes. Kate had an idea. She leaned forward in her seat, her eyes bright with desperate inspiration. What if we don't fight them? What if we tell them the truth about what's coming? They're not stupid. If they understand the real threat, maybe they'll back off and help instead. It was a crazy idea, but they didn't have many options. Jake opened a communication channel to the Kashari flagship, hoping they would at least listen before shooting. Kashari vessel, this is Jake Coleman of the Wanderer. I need to speak with your commander immediately. It's about the stations and why you need to stop attacking this one. There was a long pause. Then a face appeared on Jake's view screen. It was reptilian, with sharp teeth and cold eyes that looked like they had seen too much violence. Commander Vex of the Kashari military studied Jake like he was examining an insect. The human with the precursor ship. We have been searching for you across multiple systems. Surrender your vessel and provide the activation codes. Do this and we will allow you to live. Refuse and you will die with your crew. Listen to me carefully, Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm and steady. You're chasing the wrong thing. Yes, these stations have incredible technology, but they were built for one specific purpose: to defend against an invasion from beyond the galaxy. That invasion is happening right now. In less than 30 days, the Void Dwellers will reach inhabited space. If we don't activate these stations and prepare proper defenses, millions of beings across dozens of species are going to die. That includes Kashari civilians. Vex's expression didn't change at all. A convenient story. You expect me to abandon my mission based on claims I cannot verify? Archive, transmit the sensor data, Jake ordered. The AI sent over the long-range readings, showing the advancing Void Dwellers in horrifying detail. The dark shapes had grown larger and more numerous since the last time Jake had checked. The destruction they left behind was impossible to fake. Whole star systems had gone dark, consumed by entities that existed partially outside normal reality. Vex studied the data for what felt like forever. Jake could see calculations running behind those alien eyes. The commander was weighing profit against survival, ambition against the extinction of his species. If your data is accurate, Vex said slowly and carefully, then the Kashari Dominion faces an existential threat. We will not trust you completely, but we are not fools. My fleet will accompany you to reactivate the remaining stations. We will verify that they function as you claim. If you are lying, I will kill you myself. If you are telling the truth, then we will fight this threat together. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than combat. Jake agreed, and the combined fleet moved to the next station. Working together, humans and Kashari reactivated 4 more stations over the next 2 weeks. The Kashari engineers actually helped speed up the repair process significantly. They had different approaches to problem solving that complemented the human methods, but time continued to slip away. The Void Dwellers were now less than 2 weeks from the first inhabited systems at the edge of assembly space. Admiral Cortez had managed to upgrade 30 assembly warships with precursor defensive systems, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. They needed every single station operational if they were going to have any chance of survival. Jake pushed the Wanderer to its absolute limits, jumping between systems faster than was probably safe. They activated Station 15 with 5 days remaining before estimated contact. Station 16 took 3 days. The 17th and final station was located in a system directly in the path of the Void Dweller advance. When they arrived, they found the station already under attack. 3 Void Dweller entities had arrived earlier than predicted. They were tearing the ancient installation apart. Jake stared at his view screen in absolute horror. The entities were exactly as the precursor records described them. Massive shapes that flickered in and out of visibility. Where they touched the station's hull, the metal simply ceased to exist. Not melted or destroyed, but erased from reality as if it had never been there. We have to help, Kate said, but her voice shook with fear that she couldn't hide. The station's shields are failing rapidly, Archive reported in its calm mechanical voice. At current rates of damage, the structure will be completely destroyed in approximately 7 minutes. Jake made a decision without thinking about it too much. Thinking would have made him realize how insane his plan was. All ships focus fire on the Void Dwellers. We need to buy Archive enough time to activate the station's defenses. The Wanderer dove straight toward the nearest entity with all weapons firing. The precursor energy cannons actually seemed to hurt the thing. Holes appeared in its semi-physical form. Black wounds that oozed something that wasn't quite matter or energy. The Kashari fleet followed Jake's lead, adding their firepower to the assault. 21 ships against 3 impossible beings, but the Void Dwellers were incredibly resilient. The damage they took healed almost as fast as Jake and his allies could inflict it. The entities turned their attention from the station to the attacking ships. One of the Kashari cruisers simply vanished when a Void Dweller passed through its position. The ship didn't explode or break apart. It just stopped existing, consumed in an instant by physics that made no sense. Archive, we need those defenses active right now. Jake shouted as the Wanderer shook from a near miss. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. His shields were down to 20%. Uploading activation codes now. Station defenses will come online in 30 seconds. It was the longest 30 seconds of Jake's entire life. 2 more Kashari ships were destroyed. A human frigate lost its entire port side to an entity's touch. The Wanderer's shields dropped to 10%, then 5%. Jake could smell smoke from overloaded circuits. Then finally, the station responded. Ancient weapon systems that had slept for 3 million years powered up and locked onto the Void Dwellers. Beams of impossible energy lanced out across space, striking all 3 entities simultaneously. The Void Dwellers recoiled like living creatures feeling pain, their forms destabilized under the onslaught. The station's weapons were specifically designed to target the strange physics that allowed these beings to exist. Within 3 minutes, all 3 Void Dwellers had been either destroyed or driven back into whatever dimension they called home. Jake collapsed in his chair. His hands were shaking uncontrollably and his shirt was soaked with sweat. Archive, tell me that was all of them. Tell me there weren't any more that arrived early. Long-range sensors detect no additional Void Dwellers in this immediate area. However, the main invasion force will arrive in approximately 9 days. Captain Coleman, all 17 stations are now active and networked together. We have accomplished our primary mission. The bridge erupted in exhausted cheering. Kate hugged her brother. The Kashari transmitted messages of respect, which was apparently as close as they got to celebration. Jake just sat there, too tired to move, too drained to feel anything except relief that they had survived. But as Archive connected to the full station network and compiled all available sensor data, the relief faded. The AI displayed a tactical projection that showed the approaching Void Dweller force in complete detail. Captain, I am detecting approximately 3,000 Void Dweller entities in the primary invasion wave. The stations and our current fleet composition will not be sufficient to stop them all. The celebration died instantly. 3,000 entities. They had barely survived against 3. Admiral Cortez's voice came over the communication system, steady despite the impossible odds. Then we'll just have to make sure we stop enough of them. All military vessels, fall back to defensive positions around the stations. Civilian ships are being evacuated from the rim systems. We're going to hold this line no matter what it costs. Jake looked at his exhausted crew, at Kate and Danny who had believed in him, at the Kashari who had set aside generations of conflict to fight beside them. The 9 days before the invasion arrived passed in a blur of preparation and desperate planning. Jake barely slept during that time. Archive ran thousands of combat simulations, looking for any tactical advantage they could exploit. The results were not encouraging. In most scenarios, the defensive fleet was overwhelmed within hours. The stations helped significantly, but 3,000 Void Dwellers were simply too many. Admiral Cortez gathered every available military vessel to the defensive line. Assembly warships, Kashari cruisers, and even independent merchant ships that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons could be mounted. In total, they assembled a fleet of 217 vessels. It was the largest combined fleet in modern galactic history, species that had been enemies for decades now fighting side by side. The assembly evacuated civilians from the 20 systems closest to the galactic rim. Millions of people packed onto transport ships, leaving behind homes and lives they had built over generations. Some refused to leave. Some couldn't leave fast enough. The evacuation was chaos, but it was necessary. If the defensive line failed, those systems would be the first consumed. Jake spent the final days before contact making sure every ship in the fleet understood their role. The Wanderer had become the de facto command ship, because Archive could coordinate data from all 17 defensive stations simultaneously. Jake found himself giving orders to admirals and fleet commanders, something that still felt surreal. He was just a mechanic. He had no formal military training. But he had Archive and he had the Wanderer, and that made him the most valuable tactical asset in the fleet. Kate and Danny helped manage communications and logistics. The Assembly Special Forces troops maintained security and handled the constant stream of technical issues that arose when hundreds of ships tried to operate as a coordinated unit. Everyone worked together because they had to. Personal differences and political conflicts meant nothing in the face of extinction. On the final day, Jake stood on the bridge of the Wanderer and watched the sensor displays. The Void Dweller force was 12 hours away, then 6 hours, then 2 hours. The waiting was almost worse than combat. His crew was silent, each person lost in their own thoughts about what was coming. All ships report ready, Danny announced quietly. The stations are at maximum power. Everyone is in position, Jake nodded. He had said everything that needed to be said. Now they just had to execute the plan and hope it was enough. Archive status on the Void Dwellers? The invasion force has entered the outer defense perimeter. First contact in 37 minutes. Captain Coleman, I have analyzed all available data. Our projected survival rate is 17%. I wanted you to know the actual numbers. Thanks for the honesty, Jake said with a tight smile. But we've beaten worse odds before. We're still here, aren't we? The minutes ticked down slowly. 20 minutes. 10 minutes. 5 minutes. Then the sensors lit up with contacts as the Void Dwellers entered weapons range. They came in waves, hundreds of impossible shapes flickering in and out of normal space. The defensive stations opened fire first, their ancient weapons lancing out across millions of kilometers. Void Dwellers died by the dozens, but more kept coming. All ships engage at will, Admiral Cortez ordered. Protect the stations, watch each other's backs, and make every shot count. The fleet surged forward to meet the invasion. Energy weapons and missiles filled space with light and fire. The upgraded ships with precursor shields held up better than the conventional vessels. But nothing could withstand a direct hit from a Void Dweller. Jake watched in horror as ships simply ceased to exist when the entities passed through them. He threw the Wanderer into the thickest part of the fighting. Archive coordinated with the defensive stations, directing fire to where it would be most effective. The AI's tactical processing was incredible, tracking thousands of targets simultaneously and optimizing the fleet's response in real time. But even with perfect coordination, they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Station 4 has lost shields, a voice reported over the communication network. They're requesting immediate support. Squadron 7, break off and assist Station 4, Jake ordered, his hands dancing across the controls as he dodged between Void Dweller entities. Station 4, route auxiliary power to weapons. Kill as many as you can before they breach your hull. The battle raged for 3 hours. It was chaos unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. Ships exploded. Void Dwellers died. The stations blazed with power as they poured fire into the invasion force. Jake lost track of individual engagements and focused on the larger tactical picture, moving squadrons where they were needed most, and coordinating station fire to create killing zones. Commander Vex's flagship took heavy damage protecting one of the stations. The Kashari commander's voice came over the communication channel, strained but defiant. My engines are failing. I cannot maneuver. I will continue to fight from this position until my ship is destroyed. Negative, Vex, Jake responded immediately. Fall back to Station 13. Use their shields for cover and keep firing. We need every ship we have. Acknowledged Coleman. It has been an honor fighting beside you. As the battle entered its 4th hour, Jake realized something remarkable was happening. The Void Dwellers were starting to retreat. Not completely, but their advance had stalled. The defensive network was working. The stations were creating a barrier that the entities couldn't easily cross. Ships were being destroyed, but not as quickly as the simulations had predicted. Archive, what's our current status? We have destroyed approximately 900 Void Dweller entities. We have lost 63 vessels. 11 stations have suffered damage but remain operational. The enemy appears to be reorganizing for another assault. Jake used the brief pause to reorganize the fleet. Damaged ships fell back to protected positions. Fresh squadrons moved up to the front line. Medical teams tended to wounded crew members. Everyone knew this was just the beginning. The Void Dwellers would come again, and they would keep coming until either they were destroyed or the defensive fleet was gone. The second wave hit an hour later, with even more intensity. The Void Dwellers had learned from the first assault. They concentrated their attacks on individual stations, trying to overwhelm them one at a time. Station 9 fell when 5 entities attacked it simultaneously. The ancient structure held out for 12 minutes before its reactor was breached. The explosion was visible across half the star system. All stations implement rotating defense pattern Delta, Jake ordered, his voice hoarse from shouting commands for hours. Don't let them concentrate fire on single positions. The fleet adapted, ships moving to protect the stations that were under the heaviest assault. The Wanderer was everywhere. its superior speed allowing Jake to respond to crises across the entire battlefield. He saved Station 14 by destroying 3 Void Dwellers that had breached its shields. He pulled a crippled cruiser out of danger seconds before an entity would have consumed it, but they were losing ground. The Void Dwellers kept coming and the fleet kept shrinking. After 6 hours of constant combat, they had lost 90 ships and 3 more stations. Jake's eyes burned from staring at displays. His muscles ached from tension. His throat was raw from giving orders. Then something unexpected happened. A new fleet jumped into the system. Jake's heart sank, thinking it was more enemies. But these ships broadcast assembly identification codes. 36 fresh warships led by a massive carrier that Jake recognized from intelligence briefings. It was the flagship of the Assembly's first fleet, which had been stationed in the core systems. "This is Admiral Gregory Hayes of the First Fleet," a voice announced over all channels. "We received your distress signals. Sorry we're late to the party. All ships engage the enemy. Let's show these things what happens when they threaten our galaxy." The fresh ships crashed into the Void Dweller force like a hammer. Their weapons weren't upgraded with precursor technology, but they were numerous and their crews were eager to fight. The tide of battle shifted. The Void Dwellers found themselves caught between the defensive stations and the new fleet. Jake felt hope surge through his exhaustion. "All ships coordinate with First Fleet. Hit them from both sides. Don't give them any room to maneuver." The battle raged for another 4 hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Void Dwellers were being destroyed faster than they could retreat. The defensive network combined with the 2 fleets was too much for them to overcome. One by one, the entities were eliminated or driven back beyond the galactic rim. When the last sensor contact finally winked out, an eerie silence fell across the communication channels. Nobody spoke for a long moment. They were all too stunned to believe it was actually over. "All stations report status," Admiral Cortez finally said, her voice thick with emotion. The reports came in slowly. 14 stations remained operational. They had lost 148 ships out of the original 217. Thousands of crew members were dead or wounded, but they had won. They had stopped an invasion that had driven the precursors from this region of space 3 million years ago. Jake slumped in his chair, too exhausted to even celebrate. Kate hugged Danny, both of them crying with relief. The Kashari ships transmitted messages of